A simple harmony, a catchy hook, and a group of teenagers singing under a streetlight. That's how one of the biggest doo-wop hits ever was born. But which song came from such humble beginnings? Let's dive into this incredible story. 20. Barbara Ann, The Regents, 1961.
Hope you remember this one. Barbara Ann.
Some of the biggest songs in history weren't meant to be hits at all. Barbara Ann wasn't even recorded in a proper studio. It was a rough demo that exploded beyond anyone's expectations. But what really made this song so unforgettable? The Regents, a little-known doo-wop group from New York, recorded this track in 1958 but couldn't find a label willing to release it. For 3 years it sat in obscurity until a small label took a chance and put it out in 1961. Suddenly, the song was everywhere. The raw energy, the offbeat harmonies, the almost accidental perfection. It all made Barbara Ann an instant classic. Then, in 1965, the Beach Boys covered it, turning it into a global phenomenon. But here's the wild part. Their version was never supposed to be a single. It was recorded just for fun, and yet it became one of their biggest hits. The reason? That infectious ba 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 Barbara Ann hook. It's the kind of melody that sticks with you forever. The Beach Boys made it famous, but the Regents gave it soul. Biggest twist? The Beach Boys version was actually recorded at a party, with lead vocals being totally improvised. They never expected it to go platinum. 19. Denise, Randy and the Rainbows, 1963. Some songs have a second life in a completely different era. What if I told you Denise became an 80s pop-punk hit? This song, born in the golden age of doo-wop, has a backstory that no one saw coming. Randy and the Rainbows, a group from Queens, accidentally struck gold with Denise. It was a simple song, 2 minutes long, catchy, and heartfelt. But what made it stand out was that unforgettable hook. The song became a huge success, reaching number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Rainbows were suddenly thrown into stardom, but their fame was short-lived. Like many doo-wop groups, they struggled to keep the hits coming. And then, the plot twist. Fast forward to the 1980s, a British punk band, Blondie, loved this song so much, they reworked it into Dennis. They flipped the lyrics, changed the sound, and made it a punk anthem. A song that started as a 60s doo-wop track had now transformed into a global rock hit. Biggest surprise! The song was originally written about a girl named Denise, but Blondie's version turned it into a love song for a guy named Dennis. 18. Remember Then, The Earls, 1962. Some songs capture nostalgia so perfectly that they never fade away. Remember Then is one of those songs, a melody so powerful it transports you back in time, even if you weren't alive in the 60s. But how did this song become a doo-wop anthem? The Earls weren't a famous band when they recorded the song. In fact, they were just a group of high school kids from the Bronx who loved singing on street corners. They had no idea they were about to create one of the most iconic doo-wop records ever. What made this song special was its sing-along chorus. The repeated remember then line was pure magic. It wasn't just a song, it was a feeling. When the record was released in 1962, it became an instant hit, breaking into the top 40 and earning the Earls a place in music history. But here's something most people don't know. The Earls' lead singer, Larry Chance, was actually drafted into the Army right after the song's release. His sudden departure made it hard for the group to keep their momentum. Biggest what if? If Chance had stayed, would the Earls have been as big as the Drifters or the Four Seasons? We'll never know, but this song's legacy remains untouchable. 17. There's a Moon Out Tonight. The Capris, 1960.
There's a moon out tonight.
This song was dead on arrival, literally. When the Capris first released There's a Moon Out Tonight in 1958, it flopped completely. No radio play, no sales, nothing. It was like it had never existed. But what happened next was unbelievable. 2 years later, a small-time record collector stumbled upon an old copy and decided to give it another shot. He believed the song had something special, and he was right. He took it to a radio station, and within weeks, it became one of the biggest doo-wop hits of the decade. The song's dreamy harmonies and hauntingly romantic lyrics gave it a second life, one even bigger than the first. In 1961, it hit number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, proving that sometimes the world isn't ready for a masterpiece until the right moment arrives. But here's where it gets even crazier. The group had already broken up before the song became a hit. They had no idea their song was climbing the charts. When they found out, they reunited and rode the wave of their own success. Biggest comeback story. A song that was ignored in 1958 became a chart-topping smash in 1961, proving that great music always finds a way. 16. Daddy's Home. Shep and the Limelights, 1961.
You're my love, you're my angel, you're the girl.
Some songs feel like real-life love letters, but Daddy's Home wasn't just a song. It was a true story. This heartfelt doo-wop ballad wasn't inspired by fiction. It was Shep's actual attempt to reconnect with a lost love. But did it work? James Shep Shepard had already found some success with his previous group, the Heartbeats, who released the classic 1,000 Miles Away. But after the group broke up, Shep wasn't finished telling his story. Daddy's Home was written as a sequel. It picks up where 1,000 Miles Away left off, with the singer finally returning to the love he had to leave behind. When the song was released in 1961, it rocketed to number 2 on the Billboard charts and became one of the most recognized doo-wop ballads of all time. But here's where things take a tragic turn. Shep and the Limelights were on their way to becoming doo-wop legends until fate intervened. In 1970, Shep was found murdered on a highway in New York. His death remains a mystery, but his music lives on. Biggest mystery: who killed Shep? His murder was never solved, adding a layer of intrigue to a song already filled with deep emotion. 15. The Lion Sleeps Tonight. The Tokens, 1961. What if I told you this famous song was originally a Zulu folk chant from South Africa, and that its original composer never saw a dime from its success? The story behind The Lion Sleeps Tonight is one of the most controversial in music history. It all started in the 1930s when a South African musician named Solomon Linda recorded a song called Mbube, which means lion in Zulu. Decades later, American producers took the melody, rewrote the lyrics, and turned it into a doo-wop classic. The Tokens' 1961 version, with its soaring falsetto and jungle-like harmonies, became an instant sensation, reaching number 1 on the Billboard charts. It's one of the most recognizable songs ever recorded. But here's where the controversy starts. Solomon Linda was never properly credited or paid. He died poor, while the song he created made millions for record labels and publishers. It wasn't until 2006 that his family won a lawsuit, finally receiving the royalties they deserved. Biggest injustice. One of the world's most famous songs was stolen from its original creator. It took over 70 years for justice to be served. 14. Stay. Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs, 1960.
Please, 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 please tell me you're going to.
Imagine writing a song as a teenager, recording it in one take, and watching it become one of the shortest #1 hits ever. That's exactly what happened with Stay. But how did a 1-minute, 36-second song manage to leave such a massive impact? Maurice Williams wrote Stay when he was just 15 years old, inspired by a real-life moment when he begged a girl for just a little more time together. By the time he was old enough to record it with the Zodiacs, the song had been perfected. In 1960, it was released, and its smooth harmonies, catchy falsetto, and simple but powerful chorus made it an instant classic. It climbed all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it the shortest #1 song in history. Decades later, the Four Seasons and Jackson Browne covered it, proving that a great song never fades. But here's the fun part. Maurice Williams never thought it would be a hit. He believed it was too short to work on radio. Biggest surprise? The song was supposed to be longer, but during recording the band ran out of studio time. They kept the short version and it became a hit anyway. 13. Pretty Little Angel Eyes, Curtis Lee and the Halos, 1961.
Pretty little angel eyes, pretty little angel eyes, pretty little angel.
Some songs feel like sunshine, and Pretty Little Angel Eyes is one of them. But did you know this doo-wop classic almost wasn't recorded at all? Curtis Lee was on the verge of giving up music before one man changed everything. That man? Phil Spector. Yes, the same Phil Spector who later created the famous Wall of Sound. Back in 1961, Spector was just starting his career, and he saw something special in Curtis Lee's voice. The song was recorded in New York with Spector producing. He added the clap-heavy, echoing harmonies that gave it that bright, bouncy feel. And guess what? It worked. The song became an instant hit, reaching #7 on the charts and turning Curtis Lee into a star. But here's the twist. Lee never had another major hit. This song was his one big moment, proving that sometimes one song is enough to make history. Biggest what-if moment? If Curtis Lee had continued working with Phil Spector, would he have been as big as the Righteous Brothers or the Ronettes? We'll never know, but Pretty Little Angel Eyes remains a gem of the doo-wop era. 12. Blue Moon, The Marcells, 1961. Some songs have been around forever, but it takes the right group, the right sound, and the right moment to make them legendary. Blue Moon was originally a slow ballad from the 1930s until a doo-wop group turned it into something completely new. The Marcells, a group from Pittsburgh, were known for their wild harmonies and energetic delivery. When they took Blue Moon into the studio in 1961, they transformed it. The slow, dreamy original was gone, replaced by the now famous opening, Bum Ba Ba Bum, Bum Ba Ba Bum Bum. At first, the record label hated it. They thought it was too weird to be a hit. But once it hit the airwaves, there was no stopping it. The song shot to #1, becoming one of the most iconic doo-wop records ever made. But here's the craziest part. The Marcells never meant to record it. They were just messing around in the studio warming up. The producer hit record, and that accidental take became the song we all know today. Biggest studio mistake that paid off. The Marcells' Blue Moon was recorded in one take as a joke. It ended up selling over 1 million copies worldwide. 11. Sherry, The Four Seasons, 1962. Sherry, baby, Sherry. Some songs take years to perfect, but Sherry was written in 15 minutes. Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons had no idea it would become their first #1 hit, launching them into superstardom. Bob Guadio, the band's keyboardist and songwriter, was sitting in his car when he scribbled down a few lyrics and melodies. He wasn't even sure it was any good, but when Frankie Valli sang it in his signature high-pitched falsetto, it became pure magic. Originally, the song was going to be called Jackie, named after Jackie Kennedy. Then it almost became Terry, but at the last minute, they changed it to Sherry, and that version became a smash hit. The song went straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making the Four Seasons one of the biggest groups of the 60s. But not everyone loved it. Some critics thought Valley's high voice was too unusual for radio. Obviously, the critics were dead wrong. Sherry kicked off a string of massive hits, cementing the Four Seasons as one of the biggest American groups of all time. Biggest what if? If they had stuck with Jackie instead of Sherry, would the song have been as legendary? Maybe not. But today, it's a doo-wop anthem. The shocking doo-wop story that almost never happened. What if I told you that one of the biggest doo-wop hits in history was recorded by accident? That's exactly what happened with In the Still of the Night by the Five Satins, a song that became one of the most influential tracks of all time. It all started in 1956 when a young singer named Fred Paris was stationed with the U.S. Army. One night, while on guard duty, he began humming a melody to himself, inspired by a moment he shared with his girlfriend before leaving for service. That melody? It became In the Still of the Night. But here's where it gets crazy. The song was recorded in the basement of a church, with no professional studio, no high-end equipment, and barely any budget. The Five Satins managed to capture magic in a single take. The haunting harmonies, the smooth falsetto, and the legendary show-doop, show-be-doo backing vocals made it pure doo-wop perfection. At first, the song flopped. Radio stations barely played it, and it seemed doomed to be forgotten. But then something unexpected happened. DJs on the late-night airwaves started spinning the record, and teenagers couldn't get enough. By 1960, it had sold over 1 million copies. Decades later, the song became the only doo-wop track to appear on the Billboard charts 5 different times, proving that some music never dies. A song recorded in a church basement, forgotten at first, went on to define an entire era and remains one of the most romantic songs ever recorded. Sometimes music history is made in the most unexpected places. 10. Up on the Roof, The Drifters, 1962.
I climb way up to the top of the stairs and all my cares.
Some songs transport you to another place, and Up on the Roof is the perfect escape anthem. But did you know it was almost never recorded by the Drifters? This song was originally offered to another artist, and if they had taken it, we might never have heard the legendary version we know today. Written by the legendary Carole King and Jerry Goffin, Up on the Roof was meant to be a soothing escape from city life. The lyrics paint a picture of someone climbing above the noise and chaos to find peace. It resonated with millions, becoming one of the Drifters' most beloved hits. But here's the crazy part. The song was almost given to Little Eva, the same singer who recorded The Locomotion. Can you imagine how different it would have sounded? When the Drifters finally recorded it in 1962, it became an instant classic, reaching number 5 on the Billboard charts. The song's dreamy melody and soaring harmonies make it a masterpiece of doo-wop storytelling. Biggest near miss. If Little Eva had taken the song, the Drifters might have never recorded it, and we'd have a totally different version today. 9. 16 Candles, The Crests, 1960.
Happy birthday, baby.
Some songs define a moment in time, and 16 Candles is the ultimate birthday ballad. But what most people don't know is that the lead singer of the Crests wasn't even supposed to be in the band. Johnny Maestro, the voice behind this classic, wasn't originally part of the Crests. The group was one of the first racially integrated doo-wop groups featuring Black, Latino, and Italian-American members. When they needed a new lead singer, Maestro joined, and his smooth vocals changed everything. 16 Candles was released in 1958, but it kept growing in popularity, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1960. It became a staple of school dances, proms, and coming-of-age moments for generations. And here's something wild. This song almost lost its spot in history. The record label originally wanted to release another song as the A-side, but DJs flipped the record over and played 16 Candles instead. Fans fell in love with it instantly. Biggest what if? If DJs hadn't flipped the record, 16 Candles might have never become a hit, and we'd have lost one of doo-wop's most beloved ballads. 8. Come Go With Me, The Del Vikings, 1960.
Dum 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 dooby dum 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 dum.
Some songs change music history, and Come Go With Me wasn't just a hit, it was a breakthrough. This was one of the first doo-wop songs recorded by an integrated group, breaking racial barriers in the 1950s and paving the way for future artists. The Del Vikings, made up of both black and white members, formed while serving in the U.S. Air Force. Their military backgrounds meant that their lineup constantly changed, but that didn't stop them from making one of the most iconic doo-wop songs ever recorded. Recorded in 1956, but gaining massive popularity in 1960, the song's signature Dom 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 opening instantly grabs your attention. It's fun, upbeat, and completely infectious. It eventually reached number 4 on the Billboard charts and became a rock and roll staple. But here's something most people don't know. Elvis Presley loved this song. He often performed it at Graceland, and while he never recorded an official version, his admiration for it shows how powerful this track really was. Biggest impact. The Del Vikings broke down racial barriers in music, proving that harmony had no color, and their song remains one of the most covered doo-wop tracks of all time. 7. Runaround Sue, Dion, 1961.
It's about a girl that I once knew. She took.
Imagine writing a song about your ex-girlfriend only to have it become a massive hit. That's exactly what happened with Runaround Sue. But here's the real question. Was Sue a real person? Dion DiMucci, the Bronx-born singer, admitted that Sue was based on a real girl who broke his heart. But he also claimed the name wasn't necessarily hers. It was just a way to capture the feeling of a girl who played too many games. Released in 1961, this song was a perfect mix of doo-wop, rock and roll, and teenage rebellion. The stomping beat, the call and response backing vocals, and Dion's storytelling made it an instant classic. It climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Dion a solo star after leaving the Belmonts. But here's the wildest part. Years later, Dion revealed that he and the real Sue eventually reconnected. Apparently, she didn't mind the song at all. Biggest breakup anthem. Runaround Sue remains one of the most iconic breakup songs ever, proving that even heartbreak can turn into a number 1 hit. 6. Big Girls Don't Cry, The Four Seasons, 1962. Some songs stick in your head from the very first note, and Big Girls Don't Cry is one of those songs. But here's the bizarre part. Frankie Valli literally dreamed this song into existence. Valli once revealed that he had a dream where actor John Payne slapped a woman in an old movie, and when she protested, he replied, "Big girls don't cry." The phrase stuck with Valli, and when he woke up, he knew he had a hit in the making. Written by Bob Guadio and produced by Bob Crew, Big Girls Don't Cry was the follow-up to Sherry, and it proved the Four Seasons weren't one-hit wonders. The song's falsetto-heavy vocals and doo-wop harmonies made it an instant smash, spending 5 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It's one of the most recognizable doo-wop songs ever, even making its way into pop culture with appearances in movies like Dirty Dancing and TV shows for decades. Biggest fun fact: The song wasn't planned. If Frankie Valli hadn't had that dream, we might never have gotten one of the biggest doo-wop hits of all time. 5. Duke of Earl, Gene Chandler, 1962. Some songs feel like they were written for royalty, and Duke of Earl is exactly that. But did you know this classic was never meant to be released? It started as a warm-up exercise, and it turned into a legendary anthem. Gene Chandler and his group, the Dukees, used to practice harmonies by singing nonsense syllables. One day, Chandler started repeating the phrase, Duke, Duke, Duke of Earl, and suddenly a melody formed. They turned it into a song, recorded it, and expected it to be just another track. Instead, when it was released in 1962, it shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the biggest doo-wop hits in history. Chandler embraced the success, even dressing in a top hat and cape to perform as the Duke of Earl for years. The song's simple yet powerful message of confidence and status made it timeless. Even today, it's a symbol of cool, collected swagger. Biggest what if? If Gene Chandler hadn't played around with those warm-ups, this song might have never existed. One random vocal exercise led to a career-defining hit. 4. Silhouettes, The Rays, 1960. Some songs are born from real-life drama, and Silhouettes is one of them. Imagine walking past a window and seeing the one you love with someone else. That's exactly what inspired this haunting doo-wop classic. Written by Bob Crewe and Frank Slay, the song tells the story of a man who sees two silhouettes in a window and realizes one of them is his girlfriend. The mix of heartbreak, mystery, and smooth harmonies made it an instant hit when the Rays released it in 1957. But here's where it gets interesting. The song became a hit twice. In 1960, doo-wop was evolving, and the Rays version had a second wave of success. Then, in 1965, the British invasion group Herman's Hermits recorded their own version, bringing it back to life all over again. It's one of the few doo-wop songs that managed to span multiple generations, proving that a great melody and a great story never get old. Biggest fun fact: the song was actually inspired by a real experience. One of the songwriters had mistakenly thought he saw his girlfriend cheating through a window, only to realize later he was looking at the wrong house. 3. Save the Last Dance for Me, The Drifters, 1960.
Oh, I know that the music's fine, like sparkling wine. Go and have your fun.
Some love songs feel bittersweet, but Save the Last Dance for Me is pure heartbreak wrapped in elegance. And the real story behind it, even more tragic. Written by Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann, the lyrics tell of a man watching his love dance with others, but reminding her to save the last dance for him. What most people don't know is that Pomus was actually crippled by polio, and the song was deeply personal. Pomus married a beautiful actress and dancer, but because of his condition, he couldn't dance himself. At their wedding, he sat in a wheelchair, watching her dance with other men. That moment inspired the song, making it one of the most emotional doo-wop ballads ever written. When the Drifters recorded it in 1960 with Benny King's soulful, aching vocals, it became a global sensation, hitting number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The combination of soft harmonies and the underlying sadness of the lyrics made it unforgettable. Biggest emotional punch: the song is autobiographical, a real-life love story from a man who could never dance but wanted his wife to enjoy life. It's proof that the best songs come from real experiences. 2. Under the Boardwalk, The Drifters, 1964.
The sun beats down and burns the tar up on the roof.
Some songs capture the feeling of summer so perfectly you can almost feel the ocean breeze when you hear them. Under the Boardwalk is one of those songs. But did you know it was almost never recorded? The Drifters were scheduled to record it on May 21st, 1964. But the night before, tragedy struck. Their lead singer, Rudy Lewis, died suddenly at just 27 years old. Devastated, the group considered canceling the session. Instead, they pushed forward, with former lead Johnny Moore stepping in at the last minute. Despite the loss, the Drifters delivered a masterpiece. The song's laid-back rhythm, storytelling lyrics, and romantic imagery made it an instant classic. It climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and decades later, it's still one of the most played summer anthems of all time. But here's something wild. There are actually 2 versions of this song. The original included the lyrics, "We'll be making love under the boardwalk," but it was considered too risque for radio, so they changed it to "We'll be falling in love." Biggest near loss. If Johnny Moore hadn't stepped up after Rudy Lewis's death, this song might have never been recorded, proving that even in heartbreak, music finds a way to live on. 1. Stand By Me, Ben E. King, 1961. Some songs aren't just hits, they're timeless. Stand By Me isn't just one of the greatest doo-wop songs ever, it's one of the most enduring songs in music history. And the story behind it? Pure magic. Ben E. King originally wrote Stand By Me for the Drifters, but they rejected it. Instead of letting it go, he decided to record it as a solo artist. It was a bold move, and it changed his career forever. Released in 1961, the song was inspired by a 19th century gospel hymn, giving it a deep, almost spiritual feel. It became an anthem of love, loyalty, and resilience, reaching number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the real magic happened decades later. In 1986, the song was re-released after it was featured in the movie Stand By Me. 25 years after its original release, it shot back up the charts, proving its timeless appeal. Since then, it's been covered by over 400 artists, including John Lennon and Tracy Chapman. Biggest legacy. Stand By Me is one of the few songs to chart in 3 different decades, proving that great music never fades. It only gets stronger with time. If you love this trip through doo-wop history, don't stop here. We've got more legendary music countdowns waiting for you. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a classic. Which song was your favorite? Drop a comment below.